Moving on to the latest coming in on the Japan Olympics. Japan has denied reports that it will be giving first preference to Olympic athletes in their ongoing COVID-19 vaccination drive. In fact, media reports indicated that Tokyo was actively considering prioritizing athletes over the general public. Japan's vaccination drive has been slow out of the gates. Only a single vaccine, Pfizer, has been approved. So far, 1 million people have received the first dose. We're talking about a population of 126 million people. The elderly and vulnerable sections of the population are yet to get their shots. It is in this backdrop that reports emerged of athletes getting first preference. The Kyodo News Agency said the government could possibly vaccinate all Olympic and Paralympic athletes by the end of June. Social media was enraged. Users pointed out that athletes were young and healthy compared to the elderly. The initial plan was to vaccinate medical workers, then those with comorbidities, and finally the general public. Japan's chief cabinet secretary has denied these reports for now. The government's focus remains on the upcoming Olympics. The games are set to begin on the 23rd of July, but public opinion is decisively against this plan. A vast majority of Japanese want the Olympics to either be cancelled or postponed. The games are already under threat from a sudden surge in COVID-19 cases. A number of test events for some sports have already been cancelled over COVID-19 fears. Joining us on the broadcast this minute, our correspondent Phoebe Amoroso from Tokyo. Hi, Phoebe. Tell us more about what the government has stated at this point as a clarification.
So, as you said, there was a report on Wednesday evening by a media news agency saying that they would prioritise athletes, and then there was a huge amount of backlash on social media because that would effectively mean that athletes would get their vaccinations before the elderly population. The elderly population is scheduled to start receiving vaccinations from this Monday, but the rollout is very slow. At one point, the minister in charge of the vaccination program said that prefectures had asked for this rollout to be slow so they could adapt their systems in time, but in reality, there has just been a shortfall in supply, and deliveries of the Pfizer vaccine have been very slow. The Japanese government has negotiated larger shipments a couple of weeks back, and one shipment did arrive this Monday. But it looks like that the rest of the population, at the moment, we aren't sure when they are going to be receiving that. So going back to the statement regarding the athletes being prioritised, the Chief Cabinet Secretary went back on that statement this morning and very strongly said there was no consideration, they were not considering prioritising athletes above other people. And that hasn't really done much to quell people's anger because, as you mentioned, the Olympics are not very popular. A survey in January showed that over 80% of the population want them to be cancelled or postponed. And it's against this backdrop that we here in Japan are facing a fourth wave. Tokyo has just asked today for pre-emergency measures so that it can implement stricter controls, stricter regulations on restaurants and businesses. Already that's been rolled out just this week in Osaka Prefecture, Hyogo Prefecture in the southwest, and Miyagi in the north. There are concerns about the spread of the UK variant here. So this topic of vaccinations and who gets what when is quite a sensitive topic.
Well, absolutely. And the Olympics itself being a sensitive topic, vast majority of Japanese want the Olympics to either be cancelled or postponed. Give us a better sense of the mood on the ground on this front.
Well, I think people are getting a little bit tired of the topic of the Olympics. Of course, there was a big debate, going back to last year, whether it would happen or not, and then it got postponed to this year. And then it's been a very much a will they, won't they scenario. And as I mentioned, most people now that were surveyed are feeling that they don't want the Olympics to be held. And one of the comments on social media in response to this news of athletes potentially being prioritised was, is it the Olympics over life now? And I mean, people did not hold back in stating their opinion. And then, of course, it's not just the case of the pandemic, which, I mean, the economy has had, is suffering from business closures and from just a general lack of footfall in stores. There's not that concern, and of course, the concern to health more widely. But there is there's also concerns because there have been so many issues with the Olympics right from the outset. There were issues of logo plagiarism, the stadium ran over budget, and then, of course, there were some very unfortunate comments from the head, or the then head of the Tokyo Olympics Committee, Mori, that these comments were taken to be sexist. They got a lot of negative press internationally, and a lot of people here felt that was a certain embarrassment. Japan was not being shown in the best light. So most of the press surrounding the media has ended up being negative just because there's been an onslaught of problem after problem.
Right, leaving it there for the moment, Phoebe Amoroso, as that debate, as you're telling us, has been dominating discussions in Tokyo. Leaving it there for the moment. Thanks very much. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.